So there are going to be a lot of out of control emotions and experiences and stuff that have all been coming up over the last month. And now as we came into this moon on Monday, the 13th of November, it was very much a time of you now have power to create change in your life. And they always say is like your deepest power is found from almost your deepest insecurities. Because if you're able to hold those experiences and begin to shed light on them, it is a form of self-acceptance. And what we can accept and we can sit with, we can begin to actually heal.
Hello loves, and welcome to Finding Freedom with me, Amber Bishop Garcia, the space where we dive deep to uncover the truths that set us free. I am so passionate about helping women to reclaim their power and find the freedom that has been waiting for us all along. And if you follow me on socials, this podcast is where we take it to the next level. Together we'll peel back the layers and go beyond the surface level, because let's face it, there's so much more to explore. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the first Finding Freedom with Amber podcast. This has been a long time coming, many months of like little messages here and there, conversations with friends, messages, intuition coming around, okay, it's time. And it's really taken a lot of inner work and expansion and worthiness within myself to show up in this way. And of course, it's happened right after this new moon was in Scorpio, which for me is all about communication, releasing anything that has been holding us collectively back and making us feel powerless, small, stuck. And anything that we've been carrying around, which has been excess baggage that we haven't fully sat with, and that obviously contributes to us in this very small kind of box and container that we've been in of smallness. And of course, with Scorpio being in my third house around communication, of course, it just so happened that this was the day that my podcast was scheduled to be recorded. And so I'm really excited, and I really have the intention and the faith that this is going to be a space where we can go really deep in the topics that maybe we see here and there, but we really don't have much capacity maybe on social media to really go down and deep into. And so if you maybe come to any of my soul deep circles or any of my new moon rituals or full moon rituals, we'll go into a little bit of these topics, but I think it's something so accessible about having a podcast and having a space to just bring forward messages, conversations, insights, and any tips and learnings that myself or collectively people around me have really encountered and brought through. And what better way than to start like this? And so I obviously am super excited. And funny because as I was walking here, I never plan things in advance, which anyone who knows me around the work capacity, it's very much just sit down and see what comes through. And I was like, I'm really going to think about what I'm going to talk about today, because I'm going to be recording in 10 minutes. And I started to have really uncomfortable memories start to come up, things that I obviously under this moon, I knew that there was things that I would avoid, that I don't look at because they're uncomfortable. And, they do contribute to feeling small and feeling powerless and feeling unworthy, and of course, and then I was like, this is uncomfortable. And so I was doing a couple of errands, and then I was like, okay, what should I talk about? And then I realized that the message here is about sitting in the discomfort to allow ourselves to release it. And so there is a degree of self-forgiveness that might have to happen when we look at really uncomfortable emotions. And of course, as this message is coming through now, I'm like, it makes so much sense that this would be the theme of this week's podcast if we've just gone into a moon that has been really bringing that up for everyone collectively. And so I know that I'm not alone in experiencing really uncomfortable memories, emotions, and maybe even past experiences that have happened that make us feel uncomfortable. They might be triggering shame or discomfort or embarrassment even, maybe anger and resentment. And when we have these things, even the first thing I did was just I'm not going to look at that a second. That's uncomfortable. Let me just move on from here. And the message is we really have to learn to really sit with and experience these things in order to heal them. in order to have the experience come through for us so that we can release them finally and not put them back into the same place that they originally were, waiting for the next time that that experience comes up again and wants us to release it. And so, of course, the channel message today is going to be around self-forgiveness and release and what expansion and relief can come from that. So let's get in a little bit more. And so, as I've mentioned, we are in a time right now when we've just come out of the eclipses where we are very much had all of our shadows and all the ways that we keep ourselves stuck and small and we're not really playing to our own power have going to come up at this time. It's really a time where your soul is being shown all the ways that you are not living in your fullest freedom in this life. So there are going to be a lot of out of control emotions and experiences and stuff that have all been coming up over the last month. And now as we came into this moon on Monday, the 13th of November, it was very much a time of you now have power to create change in your life. Now that you've experienced all the things that you need to see that's really shaken you up, that showed you what is not working, now is your opportunity to co-create and begin the process of living differently. And I think when it comes to it, a lot of us need to feel and release a lot of the things that we've been holding on to that might have made us feel uncomfortable, that might be filled with a lot of highly raw emotions, a lot of discomfort, and in doing so, we then allow ourselves to release it. Because if we do not have the capacity or the availability to view any of these past things before, which is usually why they're stored deep within, it's because we haven't been able to process them fully. We might have not had the availability, the compassion, the care, to really observe these things in the past, which is why we've carried them around. And that's why they've been part of our narrative that we are not good enough, that we are not a good person, that we are an angry person, or we should feel shame, or we should feel embarrassment, or whatever the narrative story that has been created because of those things. And now is the opportunity to finally release them, to finally create a life on the other side of them. Because it's actually very, very difficult to continue to live with these repressed memories and emotions, etc., that feed the narrative that we're not good enough and still expand and move forward and grow. Because all these things, they're like little weights tying us down. And we can't fully fly if our wings are being tied together and held down with the experience of these emotions and these experiences. So we need to finally release ourselves from those things. And the thing that we can do is just sit in the energy of them. And what do you mean by the energy of them? I suppose the energy of them really is not ignoring them. A common thing that comes up is when we experience a memory or an emotion, we kind of are thinking about it in our heads. So it's easy to intellectualize them. And this is the message that I get all the time. It's stop intellectualizing things and feel them instead. And so intellectualizing them can look at, oh my God, why am I having that thought now? Why is this experience coming up? Why is this memory coming up? That is such a horrible thing. I don't want to think about that again. I'm not that person, goodbye. And that does is just pushes it away and buries it back in the place that it was for future self-exploration until finally we're able to release it. And to be in the release right now means to be just present in the physical body around those experiences. And so if it's shame or if it's anger, where is that feeling in your body? I think definitely they tend to come from the solar plexus, so your stomach area. And so if that's you, I get it. It's a clenching feeling in that part. If you have digestive issues, if you're someone whose stomach gets closed off, those are very common experiences when we were holding in our emotions in that part of the body. The solar plexus is the energy center around our power, our worthiness, our ego, lack thereof, or too much of. And so it is the place that allows us to act on our dreams and our visions, etc. Because that's where we kind of hold the energy that maybe a lot of us actually drive our energy to action and doing. And so in this space, a lot of the feelings might be like experienced there. And so when you just think about the experience or the emotion, to be able to release it, it's about being in the present and being, where do I feel this? I know maybe there's sadness for a lot of people and they feel it in their throat. Do you feel like a knot in your, like you feel like a ball in your throat? Is that like a difficulty swallowing? Does it feel like it gets closed off? What is that trying to tell you? What is that experience or emotion trying to tell you in your body? Because that is a really clever and intuitive way of it feeling into the experience of them. If it's in the stomach, it's like the stomach feels like closing in on ourselves. Like we do not feel good enough. We do not feel in our power. We feel like we need to protect and hide ourselves to be able to survive, be accepted, be loved, valued, good enough. And in feeling the experience, what we can do is we can just breathe into it. And so obviously this is not going to be for everyone. There are some experiences which are highly traumatic, which additional support might be needed for. And it's not to negate that at all and to expect that and to place blame on you for not feeling in them and that's why you're carrying them. It's not about that, but it's about taking kind of the action and the ownership in stepping into your power. And when we talk about stepping into the power, it really is about observing all parts of yourself and allowing them to illuminate your path versus be the darkness that you kind of hide in. And on the channel message that I did on Monday, on YouTube and on my Facebook group, it was really bringing through the narrative around how we really hold a lot of these uncomfortable things very, very deep down in the darkness, right? We call it our shadow parts, the darkness, the uncomfortable emotions, etc. But really, to allow them to be healed, we need to just observe them in the light, which basically just means, can you feel it in your body? Can you just observe it and see how that has maybe created a narrative in your life or created the path that you're currently walking on? And it's not to get too overly intellectual, but to feel it and kind of sit with that a little bit without allowing ourselves to ruminate in the brain. It's about bringing it back down into the body. Yeah, maybe it is uncomfortable, but what is it trying to tell you? Maybe there is a childhood experience or it's a teenager or a memory or something that's come up that's reminding you that's why you're not in your power. That's why you don't feel good enough. And then just being able to sit with it and actually just kind of play around with the feeling, emotion of it for a second, we can allow ourselves to take a step back and just breathe into that experience. And in doing so, it's about illuminating the darkness. So the things that we hold down in the darkness that we don't want to see, that we tell ourselves that we're okay about, but are deeply there, can be the main things that like really weigh us down from stepping into like expansion and power and enoughness and not being stuck. And to just kind of hold them in and feel them as they experienced, we start to shed some light onto them. So they're not this thing that we hide, but it's something that we are able to become better at accepting as part of us. And they always say is like your deepest power is found from almost your deepest insecurities. Because if you're able to hold those experiences and begin to shed light on them, it is a form of self-acceptance. And what we can accept and we can sit with, we can begin to actually heal. And so it is this degree of forgiving yourself for the uncomfortable part that you might have played in the past. Because when we talk about not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy enough, there's usually a narrative around why we individually are not good enough or not worthy enough. And what is that narrative? You know, it could be a past experience. You know, I'm not good enough because this person as a child said I was too much, or I wasn't a nice person, or I was too angry or too out there, or whatever the narrative is. And if we can begin to just sit with, what did that child self feel? Like, what is the discomfort there? Because really the really hidden wounded parts can be this inner child that's scared and fearful of you experiencing that pain. And it's almost like them trying to protect you right now, because every time it comes up, you're like, oh, I'm not going to look at that again. And it's like, no, because there's fear around it. And when we can just start to play with the energy and the emotions around those experiences, we become better accustomed to just sitting in the discomfort of it. And anyone who knows, who has like really worked on feeling and expressing their emotions, it is very much so that if we can sit in the emotion of it and begin to breathe, emotions all dissipate over time, which basically means that like the heightened intensity of the emotion does actually fade when we're able to sit in it. And in doing so, we are shedding light on parts of ourselves and parts of our experiences and our story that we felt unworthy because of. And the more that we can sit with it, the more we can accept it, and we can begin to like forgive parts of ourselves in that. If we're forgiving ourselves and we're able to really sit in the experience of them, and they are no longer as painful or as shameful, etc., what it does is it allows us permission to be more ourselves. We can really sit with, that is a part of me, but that is not all of me right now. And just because I did X, Y, Z at that time doesn't mean that that is still who I am. And that is like working through some of the emotions and some of the things that we kind of feel not enough or powerless or stuck around. And in being able to just begin to shift that and begin to forgive ourselves for those past things, begin to heal those parts of ourselves, what we're doing is we're now shining the light again into that darkness. And your greatest amount of power, if that's what you're looking for, is really found in the acceptance of all parts of yourself. And that might sound like this massive, overwhelming thing. And it kind of is. You know, anyone who has really been working on this, they know how big and how overwhelming those things can be when there's a lot of little memories and stuff that we push down. But when we can really begin to play our part in accepting them and witnessing them and learning to release them in this way, we begin to like reclaim parts of ourselves and call our power back from each of those past experiences, memories, or emotions, and reclaim them as our own and say, I recognize you and you're welcome here. Not, I recognize you and I don't want to see you, please leave. Because inevitably when we're saying please leave, there's not leaving anywhere. They're just staying deep buried in your subconscious and in your body and in your energy until we're able to fully see them and release them. And so there is the greatest healing and forgiveness you can give yourself is by allowing yourself to observe these things and begin to release them. And some of the main things that come to me when I talk about release is the breath. And so, as I said, just sitting the experience of it and breathing externally, releasing it out into your energy and just blowing it out of your body. It seems so minuscule and so small in the experience of it, but especially when we're talking about emotions, they can really be released when we intentionally sit with them and just say release. When we can breathe out and not hold our breath in, we can breathe out the emotions, the experiences, etc. Another amazing way to be able to really release and let go can be writing. And so something that I recommend a lot of my clients in my programs, and I've actually used myself, is like a self-forgiveness letter. And this can feel very overwhelming and very large to a lot of people who maybe are not at the place where they're journaling. But it can also, and it is also, highly, highly impactful in allowing ourselves to really process and call forward forgiveness in maybe a lot of places that we've never recognized in the past that we are holding on to. And so if you feel a lot of shame or a lot of anger, resentment, unworthiness, you can write yourself a forgiveness letter around that. And you can really write this letter to the part of yourself, to the memory of the experience, whatever age you were at the time that these things happened, and maybe forgive her, forgive yourself in the present maybe for carrying these patterns through. And just taking this time to really process out and not think too much when you're writing. Just free write whatever comes to your mind as a form of this forgiveness. If it's overwhelming, a lot of people prefer to like burn it afterwards. as a way of not having to see their own words again, but also as a symbolic purging and energy like cleansing. And a healer that I went to once told me, you can write this letter, and if it's available to you, you can burn it in a bowl, but you can burn it into a pink candle or tea light. Because the pink represents the self-love and the self-forgiveness. And if we write this letter and we can really pour out any emotions into it and then burn it into a pink candle, it's the extra little ritual and symbol around it. But you don't have to burn it if you don't want to. You know, there are plenty of times that I've done this and I've never burnt it and I've just kept it. But it's really can be this cornerstone and marking point for you to be like, I'm recognizing everything that's coming up right now, and I recognize just how uncomfortable it is. And simply just in the recognition of it, there can be a lot of healing there. And this is something that I've actually said so many times, and every time I say it, I'm like shocked that it's coming up again. And it really is just true for many, many people who have been on this long train of avoiding and trying to control things in their life and really gripping tightly onto the reality that they want to see, aka putting the blind eye onto everything that's happening externally, because it's too painful, because it's what they're used to, because it's part of their conditioning. It can be the first really integrated way of healing these things, because for the first time for many people, we are acknowledging our feelings and our experiences. We are acknowledging how hard it has been to carry around that level of X, unworthiness, not good enoughness, stuckness, powerlessness, shame, anger, resentment, whatever the emotions are. Just acknowledging them can be a massive, massive step for a lot of people who have not been very connected to their emotions and the experiences, aka me in the past. So this is a theme I see in a lot of women who I work with. It's the inability to really sit with and explore some of the uncomfortable things, memories, emotions, etc., even in day-to-day life. Because maybe in their day-to-day life, or maybe you in your day-to-day life, have been very used to just pushing on and getting on with it. It might be common for a lot of people to push everything aside and be everything for everyone else. Have to be okay because everyone around you is dependent on you, that you're not your main priority. And in this case, it very much happens when the emotions are too uncomfortable, that this long time of suppression has gone on. And we're no longer able or even recognizing that we're not feeling our emotions. And when we can just recognize the emotions as part of the recognition, that is a massive, massive cornerstone to starting this journey of self-forgiveness, inner healing, reclaiming your power. And for many people, that would be the first place to start before any other tools or tips that I recommend. Because the acknowledgement is like this massive moment of awareness for the first time of, oh my gosh, I recognize how much I have been through or how much I have been carrying. And I was a few years ago now, when I was in the first stages of my business and I was really working with someone, I remember just feeling so called to just have them acknowledge how hard it has been to be carrying all the things that they've been carrying. And it was this persistent message and it carried on to the point where they actually finally recognized how much they'd been carrying for so long without being able to sit in the emotion of it. And they just broke down in tears and just deeply thanked me, because they were like, it's taken all of this to really break through the barrier of protection I put up around myself to recognize, wow, this has been shit for me. And that's a very hard thing for sometimes women to even recognize, because we kind of validate everything around us and not ourselves. And in doing so, that is the moment of recognition. And in doing that, it is like the reclaiming of, I choose to get better because I'm actually recognizing everything that has held me back. And in doing so, you're opening up the floodgates to begin to receive guidance on how to actually release it, whether it's sitting in the uncomfortable feeling and breathing or crying it out, whether that's some form of energetic release, which is a very common one, which I recommend all the time, just removing everything from your energy field and just almost expelling it out of you. it could be a self-forgiveness letter and really writing. And there are many times actually where I recommend a forgiveness letter and it's not to self. But with the energy of this moon, I feel like a lot of things that have been holding us back is around our own personal narrative. So how have I not been good enough? How have I been unworthy? How have I not been a good person, etc.? And in doing that, we can forgive ourselves for not feeling good enough and for moving along this path of not being good enough. And in doing that, this letter is so healing and expansive, because when we are able to release and remove and dig out all the roots that we've been carrying, you can almost visualize it like soil, and really deep into the earth are very dead roots, which is the things that we're carrying, the emotions, experiences, the memories that are dead and not serving us. And to plant a new set of roots to grow into this beautiful tree, which is our life, our path, our passion, our power, we need to go really deep under the earth and dig out all the roots that are not serving us, so that we can begin to plant new seeds and allow that to grow and evolve and move with us into our lives, so we can take actions along the path of creation. But we can only do that when we are able to really forgive and release and let go of the things that are dead, that we're carrying around, which are keeping us in this narrative that we're holding. And let me tell you, when you allow yourself permission to experience, acknowledge, and release all that has made you feel powerless and stuck, there is a massive degree of release, of overcome even with the emotion of how much you've been carrying, and the level of expansion which you open yourself up to receive because of it is unparalleled to anything else. And there are murky waters in the interim as we begin to explore and do this before the expansion actually happens. But if we can connect to ourselves in a consistent and regular way, even if this is once a week, twice a week, every other week, the more consistent we can be with connecting to ourselves, the easier it is to wade through the murky, uncomfortable, difficult waters of the path of forgiving ourselves and releasing them. Because there is going to be an inevitable time where we are processing and moving through a lot of things without seeing a massive fruit of our labor yet. But that's expected, right? We can't expect everything to happen at a click of a finger, because that's just not how the world works. It's what we've been accustomed to with the way that the world actually is industrialized. But a lot of the inner healing takes time and consistency and patience. Things that I lack a lot of the time. I'm very impatient, very much want it to happen at a click of a finger. However, now in retrospect, I can see why it doesn't happen at a click of a finger. Because all the lessons must really happen over time, and the lessons happen in the doing and not in the outcome. So the lessons come by showing up consistently, by allowing yourself permission to release, by breathing in the emotions and sitting in the discomfort. And in doing that, that is where we build the resilience and the power within ourselves. Now that we're seeing the shadow and bringing it into light, that creates a really solid foundation for living the life that you actually want. The life that you want is at the tail end of it all. But you really must set the foundation to be able to hold that future capacity. AKA, if you want to feel deeply worthy, and being worthy for you means, having a loving partnership, what you have to actually do to have a foundation to be worthy is to show yourself that you're worthy, by giving yourself permission to release, by showing up for yourself, by taking care of yourself, by loving yourself as much as you would love a partner. And that is a solid foundation that will be everything that you need to feel worthy, and then as a consequence having a loving partner, if that's an example. And so as a recap here, this forgiveness is very much a theme with everything that's coming up in the moon right now, with the moon energy. Because what we can do is we can finally forgive ourselves and release all the baggage that we've been carrying around that maybe we've been avoiding. Because in doing so, we can now take action to do things differently. And that's where we are right now. And over this time, we are going to be really taking the action steps to doing things differently. And to even recognize and to bring awareness to the emotions or the experiences that are uncomfortable is an action that is doing things differently. And so we don't have to get super out there and think we have to be doing all of the big things. We actually just have to do one small thing consistently or a new thing for the first time, because that is already an action that you were not doing before. And so if anything from here resonates with you, you can use that as your one small action. Maybe it's just a matter of beginning to maybe recognize the uncomfortable experiences or emotions that come up in day-to-day life and just recognize them and just pause for a second and allow yourself to just experience them for a minute. And that might be all you actually need in the recognition and the permission to move forward in a new way. And so this is a lot of the energy right now, and definitely resonated on all of my calls this week with just different groups of people. And so if this resonates with you, I would advise you to take this opportunity to look after yourself, to take the steps that you need to care for yourself in this way, to begin to take one step towards releasing everything that has been holding you down and begin moving into a place of expansion and healing and worthiness and self-forgiveness. So if this is helpful, I would love to hear how this experience goes for you and really allow ourselves to move in all of this space together.
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey and taking this time for yourself today to be in presence and connection. If you're searching for more connection, wisdom, and community, make sure to join us in the Facebook group, and I'll leave a link in the show notes. In the group, you can look forward to free energy updates every week, exclusive event notifications, and soul-deep journaling prompts to spark additional inner reflection. For the entire month of November, I'll be offering soul readings at 65% off. They're not just for you, they make incredible gifts too. The gift of self-discovery and insight is truly priceless within these sessions, and I wish nothing more than to do this with you and those that you love. Until next time.